Alright, what is going on, party people? I'm headed to my Thursday in and out run. Um, and it's it's not that, um, hard with the schedule, with things kind of changing with the time change, but it's a little bit weird. Um, yeah, just my meals are kind of off. I'm not feeling hungry at the right times. So I've been eating like a small breakfast, then trying to eat an earlier lunch around 11 something, but a big early lunch. Um, so I'm kind of hoping that is the most helpful thing. But I don't know, like I'm just trying it. It's kind of new for me. The elections have come and gone. We all know the results now. I hope everybody's doing all right. I don't know. I have some friends and family that are Trump supporters. I would say the majority of people I know probably aren't like super into Trump, but I do know a couple people who are. Well, quite a few actually, more than like a couple. But I don't know. I kind of just wanted to talk about just I don't know. It's maybe like a more of an esoteric type of topic, but I do think there's maybe something to looking into things like, just like the general, what am I trying to say here? The general kind of like, what can we do to make changes in our own lives? Like, really, practicing self-care and doing what you can to have at least some kind of like reserves for yourself, like trying to never get to a point where you're like fully tapped, like you don't have any money, don't have any gas in the car, or your car's hanging on by like its last thread, or you don't have any like like you just don't kind of have what you need, or you're like too close to the edge of not having what you need. Because if something goes wrong, you're really going to be maybe more screwed than if you had kind of backup plans. So that would be one thing I would say, is just trying to get into a position where there's less problems with things, less issues with things going on, just less problems in general, and it's a crazy time right now. The economy is nuts, like, and I feel like a lot of people, I don't really know for sure, but of the friends I talk to about Trump, who support him, I would say that what they say they support, I guess, is, immigration and migrant type of policies. That's one. That's one thing that people seem to support. And then I don't know how they feel about like deportations and all that. But as far as like people crossing the border without, permission, I think that's kind of more where they stand. They kind of want that to be cracked down on. Now these are, people who work more in like, they're surrounded by people who might have like crime related activities going on and things like that. So I could kind of see that maybe they're looking at it from their maybe career perspective. I don't really know. I haven't really asked. I plan to kind of ask, like it's kind of like at this point it's already been done. So I mean, I feel like it's kind of easier to open a conversation because it's like people have already voted. We already know who's going to be the president. So it's like there's no longer a conversation of who we're going to vote for. Like we already did it. So, and I don't know, with some friends that have really open communication, we can actually talk about politics and things and not really, end up hating each other at the end of the day. And then I know other people where I'm like, I've learned I will never touch this subject with them ever again. I know some people who are kind of more into Trump for like evangelical religious type of reasons. There is some kind of like theory out there that he's kind of representative of some prophetic kind of thing where there's some kind of parallel explanation for like, oh, like King, I don't remember who it was, like something with a J. I don't even know where people get this from, but they're like, oh, he was like prophesied and all that. Like they think he's like some holy godly guy because I guess he was Christian or something. I don't know, but just because somebody is Christian doesn't really mean a lot. Like a lot of, I don't know, like it doesn't mean somebody's like practicing the religion, and it doesn't mean that they're practicing love or acceptance or tolerance. Even like they're not practicing like helping humanity and like those types of practices. Like if you look at the life of Jesus, how he was basically healing people and trying to call out the religious systems in place that were kind of trying to keep people down. I don't really think Trump is doing that. Like, and I feel like, for someone to call themselves a Christian, that's the whole thing, right? Being Christ-like. And if they're not Christ-like, then are they really a Christian if they're not following that model? It doesn't really matter what people say about like the prophecies and all this other stuff. And humans, we're not perfect. We all make mistakes. But I just, I think it's kind of tricky to start going down that line of saying like, oh, this person's a prophet and like they're like prophesying or whatever the heck I don't know, like they're part of some prophecy where like they're supposed to have some role in like helping it, like it's supposed to help the Christians. There is also like a lot of backing by like the Mormon church with certain things. Like they've got a big hand in things. So does the Catholic Church. Like those two organizations are very, very strong in their representation or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I'm kind of still trying to figure out what are the best methods to really address things with how they are now. Like I think anyone who could be potentially hurt by policies, it's good to check in on those people. I heard from quite a few people, and I was I'm glad to have such great friends. Like it was nice to hear from them, and just people checking in and like intentionally checking in, like that's nice. Like we didn't get into the whole how'd you vote kind of thing, but it's I feel like it's a good start, at least checking in on your loved ones, seeing how they're doing, seeing how others are doing, seeing how everyone's kind of coping with things. And if they're not coping well, just trying to understand what could help, how you can help someone, um, how you can be supportive, learning about the different issues that kind of come around, um, just kind of knowing about them, that helps too. So, um, oh man, I always mess this up. I'm getting to the wrong place. I'm trying to get mine here. But yeah, I guess that's one thing that I'd say, try to check in on your people. Try to kind of be aware of what's kind of going on around you, and being able to kind of support people, if it's possible. It's possible to show your support, to show your love and care. Try to do it. That would be just one thing I would say. Another thing, I would say it helps to, not only just have all your ducks in a row for, any kind of planning that you're trying to do for the future. Just, doing what you can in advance. I know they were saying, when people thought that Trump was going to get elected, I remember there was this conversation about like people decreasing the amount that they're kind of crossing the border because they felt like, they might be at risk of getting deported anyways. So there's that. But yeah, just, I don't know if I have any like real direct advice, but the people who are not supporters of Trump, there's still community there, and I think it's important for people to kind of come together. It seems like there are a lot of people who just, do support human rights. It's not like there's not an awareness of how certain things impact the rest of the country, but there is that kind of argument between human rights, what's actually a right, and then also people making legislation that's kind of like against different groups. I mean, it's a challenge. I mean, I can kind of see, in a way, some people's concerns with, definitely with the economy side of things, but I don't know, as far as like, someone like, Trump getting elected, it's like, I don't know, like, it's not, we'll see what he actually ends up doing, because a lot of times these guys talk a big game. We'll see what actually ends up unfolding. We all know that when politicians talk about things, it's not like they're going to do 100% of what they say. So I feel like best case scenario, there's not a lot of follow through. But even as far as like women's rights and people in like the South or Midwestern states or other kind of areas where it's maybe more rural or less urban areas where you don't have, the same opportunities that you might have in like a bigger city, because there's not as much variety, like people have choices that, it's going to be hard, if things start changing for abortion laws, if things start changing for healthcare, being covered, whatever it is, I mean, some of these things are in place because they're needs that people have, I mean, as a female, I could say, even firsthand, even when you do have healthcare coverage, you're educated, you feel like, you go into doctor's offices and you feel respected by the staff. I've even had experiences where I'm like, yeah, I wonder how the treatment would go if I was coming from a place of, wealth and means, or if I was coming from a different insurance, that kind of like signifies that I'm wealthy, or if I was able to get a healthcare plan that was really great. I've noticed they don't really consider holistic options. They don't really consider anything other than what is kind of being pushed. I've noticed, and I think it might be Medi-Cal system. I don't know for sure of any other, but I know for a fact a lot of people who have been, who've used Medi-Cal, a lot of people have mentioned as females that they're getting recommended for birth control, to get on birth control. And it's for almost anything, they kind of recommend, they're not anything, but like for a lot of different conditions, they're recommending birth control medications, and that doesn't seem good. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, the reason why I mentioned the thing about birth control is because it's like, I guess, it can cause a lot of issues. It can grow fibroids, and that it can cause a disaster of issues. Basically, fibroids are tumors. They're non-cancerous, but it's still not good to have that kind of stuff growing in you. It can mess up your cycles. When your hormones get all screwed up, you can get pretty screwed. And then they start recommending like hysterectomies and all sorts of like things where, at least from the research I've done, it seems like they look, and a lot of people have had problems after that. They've had issues after being told after getting certain types of procedures, the fibroids might grow back because they don't teach you about, like, oh, you have to make different lifestyle changes. Like, some people go vegan, some people seem like they're doing some kind of keto diet, and some people seem like they do, like, avoiding like different types of berries and flax and soy and things that kind of promote heightened estrogen and things like that. Like, I don't know, I'm not a professional in that, but it's kind of interesting because I've talked to quite a few female friends, and I'm like, I like almost all of them have been recommended to start birth control, and I'm like, what's going on with this? And that's just like a basic thing. It's like they weren't recommended birth control because they weren't trying to get pregnant. It seems like there's something going on where they're trying to like use birth control, or maybe they're studying it to see what it does, but then like you end up with some kind of procedure. If it doesn't work for you, it can make a lot of symptoms and side effects worse, and then you're kind of stuck with doctors trying to figure it out. And if you're not a straight person and you're dealing with this, I mean, it's already complicated talking to doctors about health, women's health, sexual health, things like that. Like, they kind of just assume a bunch of stuff, and you're just kind of like, what is going on? Like, what are you saying? You know, like, they'll often ask, if you're sexually active and things like that, and then they just assume you're having vaginal sex with men. Like, that's just the assumption. Like, even if it doesn't say that in your chart, or if aren't, even if it doesn't say it in your chart, or that you're straight, or, they just either overlook it or they just don't think about it too much. Like, I've had different experiences though with like younger doctors. They seem to kind of be a little more, at least in LA, they're a little more like culture savvy. So they kind of, they probably have people that they work with, and they have a lot of friends that are probably LGBT, possibly. But I mean, I'm glad I've never experienced like firsthand prejudice, I don't think necessarily, but I have had different types of healthcare, and I know the difference between, how they talk to you, how they educate you, versus, if you're getting different types of insurance where you don't really have, where it's like a government insurance that you're not paying for. It could be kind of limiting, but I feel like the insurance can be also very good. I'm not saying don't use it or it's bad for you. I'm just saying, like, it kind of just depends on your experiences, and I just can't imagine things getting worse. It's like, if things are potentially going to get worse from what they are now, it's like, this is a problem for sure. Because it's already a little shaky with the tax brackets, or the income brackets of like qualifying for healthcare. I've been in positions before where I've literally had to not work at certain jobs, just because, the income's gonna, take me out of my healthcare, and then I wouldn't be able to afford, if I was in the middle of getting treatment for something, and I wouldn't be able to afford it, or it'd have to come out of pocket, and then my paycheck wouldn't really be, like, either way, it would come out to be like the same amount of money, either paying out of pocket, you're taking money out of your paycheck, or if you're working a lower income job or less hours or something to make sure your income's low enough so that you can keep the insurance. It's kind of the same amount of money, so you can kind of get a little screwed with that kind of thing, unfortunately. Yeah, so yeah, healthcare is definitely a big deal. For LGBT communities, things that have to do with children and adoption and, partnerships, marriages, common law rights, basically. Things that have to do with, just, I don't know. It trickles down to other things. Like, I feel like when at the top, when rights are taken away, then it almost makes places of employment and different types of places like churches and all sorts of places, feel like they can discriminate, because there is discrimination kind of in the system. I kind of get that sense that that's kind of how it tends to kind of unfold. It's like, well, all the government has to do is give permission for like one type of prejudice law, and then the others who are kind of really, not so good people out there kind of can get away with other stuff. I remember we used to do these Relias trainings at one of my old jobs, and we'd have to do them every year, and I think a couple times, like, there's like an elective you could pick. It's like CE credits. There's an elective you can pick, and I think within those electives, I almost always pick the LGBT one. And I was pretty shocked to find out, there are so many states where you're not protected as far as like, you know, any kind of like hate crimes and things like that, or even like equal opportunity employment. You're not really considered if you're an LGBT person and you get fired over some kind of situation at work where you feel discriminated against. There's not always protections, and I was just shocked about that. I was like, really? And that was just a couple things. There were a lot of places where there are no protections, and just protections that other people would have, other minority groups would have. There's a type of discrimination that goes on that's just not really seen or accounted for. Even things like sodomy laws and things like that, like you can't have anal sex. I mean, that exists in the United States. There are places where that's considered an illegal thing. I don't know. I really don't know. Do people get, arrested for it? I mean, I'm assuming they can get, like, I've heard about entrapment and things like that. And it's like, I don't know. Like, how do you, I don't know. It's taking it too far, and I don't even know what to think about some of this stuff, like, with parents. I've known more than one person who was born in the U.S. as a child, and their parents were from Mexico. But the child was born in the U.S. I remember on some missions trip we met this pastor who had a son. His son's probably in his 30s by now, but at that time, the son was young. I don't think he was even in high school yet. And, he was born in Arizona, so he had U.S. citizenship. And, things like that wouldn't be really an option. Like, I have friends who had come to the U.S. for school, for college, grad school, things like that, and then they had to go back to their original countries, and they have kids, and now they're trying to apply to be able to live in the U.S., and they're trying to do it that legal way. It's taking years. I don't really know what the process is. I'm a little curious to ask, but it's also kind of like none of my business. But, good people, hardworking people, educated in the U.S., fluent speaking in English, have kids. They would prefer their kids to be educated in the U.S., but they can't really seem to get, approval to be in the U.S. And I don't know why, because they already lived here before for like years. Like, they lived in the U.S. for probably like 5 years or 4, I don't know, like around 5 years, maybe even longer, maybe even like 6-7 years or so. Like, they lived in the U.S. for a really long time before they had kids. And so but their kids weren't born in the U.S. and they're not Mexican. I'm talking about some people I know from some other countries, but it's like things like that to me just don't make a lot of sense. Why they can't come back and have, work and have their kids get educated and contribute to the system. I mean, not everybody has to get educated, but we need professionals in different fields. And it's like, if people want that, they want that for their kids, and they're willing to kind of like apply to come and live and do it, I don't really see why that can't happen. But I don't really know. I don't want to, I don't know. It's hard for me to like speak on a lot of this stuff because, as you guys know, I'm not a news watcher. I try to be informed, but it just stresses me out so much. Like I do it for my own mental health. I'm not doing it because I'm like, oh, I hate like this country or whatever. I'm doing it because I just, I have to protect my own sanity, and it just stresses me out way too much to be listening to so many stories. I like to wait till the story's a little bit older and then hear kind of more about it, because it seems like stories shift and change so much from the initial time, and then it's just so much information where it's like you can't. I feel like when there's an initial issue that makes it to the news, it's really hard to get you know you know reliable details until it's been an issue for a while, and then you kind of get more details on both sides of the story. So for me, I don't really like the brand new news. It's like, if it's a breaking story right now, it's like I don't really want to hear it. Like, let's give it a week or two and then see what they're saying at that point, because it's like I don't have the mental energy to just be like going back and forth between different things changing all the time, different stories changing all the time. It's like I gotta spend my energy doing other stuff. Like, I've got enough problems as it is, and enough issues with my own energy as it is, and focus, that I can't be like, taxing myself so much with, these news stories. To me, it's just a waste of my time. But I do think it's important. I just don't think it's like the world's most important thing for me to pay attention to for hours on end every day. I get that people like it. I don't, but teach their own. But yeah, I don't know. I think I want to talk to some people that I know who are Trump supporters and kind of see where they are on things. I mean, at this point, it's like there's no going back, but there's no going backward as far as like, oh, let me revoke my decision and like do it again, like, but I'd really like to know, if the ish hits the fan, would they step in for their friends and family to support them, even though they voted for someone who's trying to take rights away from people? Would they still, be a human rights supporter and actually step up? Because, I mean, the people I know, I would say they're good people. They're humanitarians. They are. Like, they've, some people, they serve their country. Some people, they've worked in mental health. They're very generous, nice people. So it's just interesting to see kind of how things have unfolded. But I'm done driving for now. I'm going to go eat my early lunch because I didn't sleep well. I stayed up too late. Didn't sleep good, but whatever. But with that, I guess, thanks for listening.